Up, going live more or less. Putting on my Nivea hand cream. So when you get older, you got to use eye drops and nose drops and ear drops and hand cream and preparation H and just all of this stuff. I got a whole box full of stuff. And I thank those of you that send me the diapers and the old people piddle pads, all that stuff. Uh, I'm using the I'm using the tripod that Dibble Craftian sent me. If you're hearing me, give me a thumbs up so I know that somebody's there. Because all I see is zero so far. Encourage old Pop Pop as old Pop Pop tries to encourage you. There's a whole bunch going on in the world. And as an older person, we're responsible for helping the younger people. Hey, Melanie, how are you? As an old person, we're responsible for helping the young people to avoid the pitfalls that we fell into, so that as a younger person, you can start out further ahead in life's race. So I came from a very bad background. My father used to speak curses over his children. At dinner time, he would say this, that's good. At dinner time, he'd say a rather blasphemous prayer. He'd say, bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts and all of these snot-nosed, worthless children. So essentially, he was speaking a curse over his children. And boy, he raised up a family, a messed up, dysfunctional mess of a family. And then he wondered why everything was the way it was. I'm not going to go into that right now because too much is going on in the world. And you have to have your relationship with God first through Jesus Christ. It says no man comes to the Father except through the Son. It's like if I went over to somebody's house and I walked in and started to make a meal in the kitchen, they would think I was nuts. But if I go into somebody's house and they know that their son invited me, then they pretty much usually will give you the run of the house and good food to eat and entertainment and all of that other stuff. Most people will. So that's the deal with the Father. The Father does everything by covenant. He says, when we have a relationship, if you do this, I'll do that. And I do not believe in unspoken requests. I do not believe in silent prayer. Everything in the Bible said, Jesus said, Jesus said, Jesus said, then he spoke. You know, the devil said, if you're hungry, turn these rocks into bread. And Jesus didn't address the devil directly like people do now, which is very dangerous. I had a friend who was a devil talker, and he started hearing voices, and then one day he committed suicide by macing a bunch of cops, and they capped him. And I had told him, I had warned him, because he was a new Christian. And he said he was going to take on the devil. And I said, no, you don't. You don't talk to the devil. These evangelists that are devil talkers, that is very dangerous territory. Jesus spoke the word when the devil tempted him. He said, it is written, no man lives by bread alone, but by the word of God. Every breath by the word of God. He used the word. And when you have hard times, you have to look through your Bible and you have to find something that is applicable to your situation. I have been off the air for a couple of days because my phone dropped between the bed and the wall, and being bedridden, there's no way that I could move the bed or anything to recover the phone. So in faith for the last 3 or 4 days, I've been praying the prayer of the man who, by whatever means, dropped his axe into the water, and he prayed the prayer of recovery for his axe head. Back in Bible times, anything that was metal or anything like an axe head, which was formed, was a very big deal, very expensive, and very rare. Things like mirrors were very rare. Everything that we take for granted today, back in Bible times, was more or less like a little miracle. So the man prayed that God would restore the axe, and the axe had literally floated on top of the water for him to reach down and grab it. You figure a 6 or 7 pound axe head floating on top of the water. So I've been praying the prayer of restoration over my phone for like 3 days, and lo and behold, the Spirit said, try one more time to get it. And I reached down between the mattress and the frame of the bed, and the phone had just barely caught on the frame to where one little dink and it would have fallen down into the wall and been unrecoverable. And that would have been that. And I was able to get my fingers, I wet my fingers and got some friction on the back of that thing and very carefully grabbed it up until I could recover it. So I'm grateful for miracles like that. You might not see it as a miracle, but the odds for the thing to fall and then catch right at the top of the phone before it went the rest of the way, especially when you have an old man that's in bed, lying in the bed, and any time I turned or anything like that would have been a chance for the thing to fall. Hey, Katrina. So, in any case, a lot's going on in the world, and I'm asking you again that as this trap closes very slowly, to still be diligent, to keep doing your preparations, to keep practicing at least one day of camping, of living off the grid, living without electricity, seeing how you're going to cook your meals and wash your dishes and all of that other stuff. Maybe you would want to get a bunch of paper plates and spoons and cups so that if the electricity goes out and you don't have your dishwasher, that you can eat off of the paper plates, that kind of thing. Just think about whatever is missing in your preparations. Hey, Justin. Yeah, I've been tolerable, thank you. Nothing's been easy. Nothing's been easy, but it's been tolerable. Somehow, summertime has fleas, and somehow either somebody delivered something to me, or when they walked into the room, they had fleas on their shoes or something. But in any case, they gifted me with fleas. And I've been fighting these fleas. And boy, they've been tearing old Pop up. And you don't even see them. And I've had to steam my pillowcase and spray alcohol onto the bed and the carpet, and I don't know where they came from, but usually they're a summertime thing. And so maybe one of the delivery guys walked through some grass, and when they delivered my boxes and stuff, they gifted me with the fleas. But the little things have been precocious and ferocious and everything. So I've been having to put antihistamine spray on my arms and all sorts of stuff when they bite. So I've been praying that God will deliver me from these things by the word of his power. He said he would deliver me from the noisome pestilence and the snare of the fowler. But even outside the door, my room opens right up to the street. People 2 o'clock in the morning riding by, not caring for other people with this real loud music. And hey, Johnny. Yeah, I'm staying strong and blessed by the word of his power. And people arguing and stuff. I mean, having violent arguments, where they can't pay their rent and stuff like that. So I don't call the front desk when somebody's arguing. When somebody's arguing, I scrape my legs into my wheelchair and I stop and pray for them, for their soul salvation, and that God will bless them physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, put a hedge of protection around them. The other night, these children who, they turn the children out till all hours of the morning. It's hard in a hotel for children to be raised up in a hotel where everybody's sitting on the bed watching TV, and the parents will kick the children out for a while so that they can do the down low and all of that. And you hear the children 12:30 at night outside, and they're so skinny and all. So Katrina, I took the case of Doritos that you sent me, and I opened up the door, and as the kids went by, I handed out bags of Doritos to the kids. 12:30 in the morning, the kids were outside my door playing. I'm like, kids, are you all getting enough to eat? And I wish I had had a case of Coca-Cola or something. Man Raj usually brings me a case of cola every month, but he forgot this month. I don't think he feels well. He's been crabby, and I haven't been pushing the buttons with him because he's actually older than me. But he eats a clean Indian diet, all vegetarian. He works out. He's got what in Indian culture is called a clean face, where you have a shaved face and you go to God with a clean, happy face. He's got a full head of hair, which in their culture, if you're bald, is a curse. And the third thing in their culture, they figure if something catastrophic happens to you, like the young guy who came up behind me and punched me in the spine and put me in the wheelchair, they figure if something like that happens to you, that it's from God and you deserve it and all of this other stuff. But I have made a way to deal with it and to cope with it and make the best of the situation, because this September 18th will be 5 years that I've been a prisoner of my room without being able to go outside. And I wheel up to the door and get a little bit of sunlight, in between the acid rain and the contrails and the microplastics that are always sprinkling down upon us from those Illuminati world leaders. And speaking of that, Uncle Joe has sent 3,000 troops over to Europe to get lined up to go into the meat grinder. So we have to keep them in prayer. Because if you remember, the last time those 13 service people came back from Afghanistan, Uncle Joe was bored. He was looking at his watch like, when is this honor roll going to be over with? So we have to keep all of these people in prayer, pray a hedge of protection around them. It's best if we do it in different times of the day so that we can keep a hedge of protection going around our service people. We need to pray for revival in America, fam. America needs revival. It says, if my people, which are the believers, will humble themselves, seek my face and pray, turn from their wicked ways, God will hear from heaven and heal our land. With all of the fires and droughts and all, how many times have you heard in this generation the president call for a national day of prayer? Not one time. Back in the day, when I was a much younger person, if a fire happened or droughts or floods, the government would call for a national day of prayer. And things would work themselves out. Now we've had, if you watch on the EAMS, I got my first troll. Got my first troll who's decided to troll the message board. See, that's it, fam. God sends the word, and it says the devil immediately goes after that. And that's true. And see, these people, they're foolish because they don't realize as they do the devil's work that one day they're going to get the devil's paycheck. They're all bold and everything because they're young. They got the breath of life in their body. But when they get to be my age, to where you have to breathe with an oxygen tank and you have to rely on God for your very next breath, they're not going to be that bold because they know at their last heartbeat that the judgment is going to come. Judgment is already on America, fam. These prosperity preachers are lying to people. We are in what's called the beginning of birth pains, which is right before the tribulation period. And if anybody gets left behind, they are going to go through 7 years of hell on earth that's going to make the droughts and famine and everything that we have now look like a cakewalk. So if you look at stops like Canadian Prepper, he's got an excellent channel, and he has everything about the yellow and the blue country that's going on. And then you have Watchman River, Tom at Watchman River. He's an excellent channel if you want to get inspired. I watch Behold Israel, which is Amir Sarfati, his channel. He used to be an intelligence officer with the Israeli army, and he's still hooked up. Very good channel. Then I watched this other channel, which is, I think it's called Monkey Works. And they tell where all of the BOMBERS are flying around in the world. And the Russians have had a submarine with a torpedo called Poseidon floating off of our East Coast, and they've had it off of the coast of England. And I think if anything happens, that they're going to whack England first. And the reason for that is England doesn't have any resources that are very necessary to the rest of the world. And they're far enough away from the rest of the bear country that the bear country could whack them with a BOMB and prove to the world that they mean business without the radiation coming back into the bear country, that they're far enough away. So that's my guess, is that before we get whacked, that England will get whacked first. I'm not hoping for that. I'm just saying logically, I've looked at the maps and the intel and all of that stuff. I watch Canadian Prepper. I watch Bear Independent. A whole bunch of great channels out there. I watch Wehan Gravitas, which is Indian news. And I watch them because, see, they don't have any reason to lie to us like the American media has. They don't have a narrative that they're trying to enforce. This wokeness that's telling us to worry about people's pronouns when we're right on the edge of WW3. And don't get me wrong, when I worked at the front desk, at the registry desk, when somebody would come in, I would ask them, how do you prefer to be addressed? Do you prefer to be called Mr., Ms., they, them? I was way ahead of all that stuff. And if somebody had a special name they wanted to be called, this one lady wanted to be called Nina. And she was very offended if you called her by her last name because you weren't being, friendly with her. She took it that way. So, okay, when she signed her card, I put Nina in big, bold letters, and I set the card up in the deck so that the next person at the window, when she came, would know how to address the lady. Simple as pie, to be a little bit polite and to make, concessions for people for whatever reason. People are alone in this world, and they want to know that somebody is articulate and somebody's going to care, that kind of thing. So, hey, Angel, how are you? Everything is tolerable, but it's tolerable because I had my prayer time and I, spoke the word over my situation. Now, I want to address that really quick. When you speak the word over your situation, you're not using Christian Science. You're not denying the illness. The illness is there, but you're speaking God's word of recovery over illness. You're saying, I speak to this cancer that by the stripes of Jesus, I am healed. And see, in other countries where they don't have the doctors and the medicine and all of that, if a child passes away, they will, before they hop on the bus and pump that child full of stuff and bury it, they will stop and they'll pray for that child, maybe even for 1 or 2 or 3 days. And in many cases, that child will sit up in the coffin and resume life because God honors those prayers. And see, in our country, we're used to popping a pill. Everything's got to be fast. I had one prayer that took 1.5 years until it recently came about. And that was for restoration for a particular person in government that was very necessary, a very honorable person that had been slandered. And I prayed for him every day. And I'm not going to get into the politics of it. I'm not going to say who it is. But I prayed for the person for a year and a half. They were vindicated and they were restored to their position, and their country needs them very badly. So I found that there are certain things that will take prayer and fasting. It'll take maybe 30 or 40 days to reconcile. Like when I get up in the morning and I say, "This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." I don't always feel like rejoicing. I don't always feel perky. And I drag myself over to the coffee pot and I drink a 7-ounce cup of coffee, no more, because I found that way it doesn't bother my blood pressure. And then I speak life and health and healing to my hands and my feet for restoration of the circulation. Then I ask God to forgive me of my sins. And then I have my prayer time. And believe me, I keep you all in prayer too. Justin and Maria in New York, that when and if something happens in New York, that God will give you favor, protection. He'll provide for you. He'll make a way out of no way, that if something's going down, that maybe you can duck into the subway. And another thing about that, fam, is you should always have a day bag. You should have a day bag with some sort of crackers and water and whatever else to make yourself comfortable, your medicines, so that if the subway goes down or if somebody goes on strike or you're stranded away from home, that you're not going to be out of luck. And it's nice that if everybody, had a little bit extra for somebody else, and everybody's down in that subway, that everybody can share some water and stuff like that. Years ago, when I was homeless, I was sitting on a bench out in the hot sun, minding my own business, not bothering anybody. And the people from the apartment complex above, now the bench was on the sidewalk on the street in public property. And the people from the apartment would open up the window and tell you to go away, that the bench was some sort of landmark that you're defiling by sitting there, just minding your own business, having your prayer time quietly, asking for God to do something in the situation. And lo and behold, these other homeless people came by. I didn't ask them for anything. They went next door to the little market and they bought this great big bottle of water, and they gave me first sip, which in homeless venue is a very big honor, that they give you the first sip and then everybody else takes their sip. But they did that kindness to me. Homeless people with 20 cents in their pocket bought old Pop a big old cool bottle of water, when the people in the luxury apartment are opening up their window and yelling at old Pop to get his butt off the bench and to go walk someplace else. And I was well dressed. I always kept myself clean and I never bothered anybody. But just my sitting on the bench all by myself, bothered people. When I lived with my brother, I used to put the chair into the corner and have quiet prayer. And my brother would come by and he would slap my hands apart And he would say, don't do that in my house, my house. And he ended up losing that house too. I did something that the Spirit told me to do one time. I was having a barbecue at my house years ago when I lived out in Albany. I had a relatively nice new townhouse, and I was having a barbecue, and I bought these beautiful steaks, T-bone steaks. And so I bought one for me, one for my brother, and I bought one for God. And in any case, I said, God, I want you to have this, and let the smell of the steak going up be a sweet aroma before your throne and your altar. Now I felt in the Spirit to do that. So I took my steak off of the barbecue. I took my brother's steak off of the barbecue. And after a while, he asked me about the third steak. And I told him, I said, leave it on the barbecue. That's God's. And of course, he thought I was crazy. And he said, I'm not wasting steak. You know, I'm not wasting steak for your God. And he snatched that steak off of the barbecue. And we had big portions of steak that I had gotten for us. And he made sure that he wolfed down that steak that I had put on the barbecue for God. And I would never have done that. I'll tell you, I would never have been that bold and foolish, because once you give something over to God, it is God's property. So he wolfed down the steak, and shortly after that, he was at work, and he was putting a transmission in a car, standing on a ladder underneath the car, which was up on the rack. And the weight of the transmission and his body weight snapped the ladder real quick. And down he went with him and the ladder and the transmission and everything. And it crippled him for life. It crippled him for life. And he was never the same. He was never the same after that. I'm not saying that God did that. I'm just saying that happened very soon after he took that steak, off the barbecue and said, you don't want to waste a good, perfectly good steak on God. What's the difference between giving money to a church or leaving a steak on a barbecue for God to smell that beautiful aroma going up into the air? And of course, now they have people who will call the police on you if you barbecue a steak. There was a black family who moved into a neighborhood, and they had problems with some of the neighbors. It was a cul-de-sac, and they didn't feel that the family belonged or whatever fit their routine that they had in the cul-de-sac. And it was on the news about a year ago, and the family's minding their own business, having a family barbecue, and all of a sudden the police show up, and a lady across the cul-de-sac had told the police that these people's smoke was coming into her yard and causing her a problem, and that they needed to stop the barbecue because their smoke was impinging on her property. And the police actually stopped the family and made them, cover up the barbecue and take the food inside and cook it and all. And the harassment never stopped. And I've known people, I had a boss, and he got on the bad side of his neighbors, and he had a lot of trees on his property, and the neighbors would complain that his trees, the leaves would fall on their property, and they would have to rake up his leaves. But that was because he had sown bad seed and he had been trifling with his neighbors. He put up a fence, and when you do fencing, you put up a decorative part for your neighbor, and then you're supposed to put up a part of fence for your property so that your neighbor's not looking at the ugly nails and backboards and everything for your fence. So this guy put up poles and this ugly, rough fencing, and then the neighbors got to look at this stuff on the other side, and so they complained. Normal etiquette is to put a finishing layer on the fence so your neighbor doesn't have to look at the ugliness. So these people decide to paint the fences wacky green and purple and everything to really rub it in on the neighbor. And so they had this pissing contest going back and forth that made it unpleasant for both of them. And both of them had really big properties. And so when I would come over to detail my boss's car, the neighbors would ask me why I was detailing the car of such an evil man. But the thing was, the boss was always good to me. When I worked at the Dodge dealership and I was in between paychecks, I'm not talking about the owner. He was as cheap as the day is long. The boss over top of me, the general manager, he would, one day I was sitting and it was hot. Oh my God, it was hot. I had my eyes closed and I was wishing for a nice Quiznos sub and a soda pop and some chips and all. Vernon came through the door with this great big 12-inch long sub, 2 bags of chips, and 2 soda pops. And man, was I happy to have that, because I was really long and gone. And it was pretty much exactly what I had asked for. And so when the neighbors told me this guy was evil, I was like, I couldn't even fathom that. So, the alarm just went off and knocked me off my train of thought. But getting back to everything that's going on with the world, that how close we are to WAR and all of the floods and the droughts and everything, we really have to be on our guard to be in good straits with God and make sure that when that time comes that we don't get left behind for the tribulation period. Even Billy Graham preached that, and he was a conservative. He didn't believe in the rapture, but he did believe in the second coming. And all of the major religions, the Muslims believe that Mahdi is coming. The Jews believe that Messiah is coming. Christians believe that Messiah has already come and will come back. So everybody has this air of expectancy, even the Satanists. And I went to one site. I thought it was a Christian site, and it turned out it was a Satanist site that had posted all of this scripture. And the long story short is the Satanists are excited about the time of the rapture, because all of the Christians will be taken up, and then people can do whatever they want to do without any interference. And so they're excited about the rapture as much as the Christians, because they want us gone. And they're already doing stuff like in Canada, they've legalized bestiality. And you see all these videos with people with a dog lying on top of them. You have a dog that just licked its private parts and licked its butt, and the person is lying there in their bed with a dog on top of them. My generation, you never did that. Dogs and cats stayed outside, and you had a house for them, and you gave them food and clean water. And if the weather was really bad, you brought them into the outside porch, you know, and made sure they were warm and taken care of. You played with them and threw the stick and the ball and all of that. But you never took a dog, you know, with its anal gland smell and all of that other stuff, and dragged it up on top of you and laid with it on a sofa or on a bed like they do nowadays and let the thing lick you in the mouth. And I've been over to people's houses where the dog has sat on the sofa with its bare butt, and the sofa will smell like bum without being too coarse. And people say, oh, dogs are clean. Well, if you believe that, you go ahead and you go to a hobby store, you buy yourself a $25 student microscope, and you let the dog lick that slide and you put it under the microscope, you're going to see all sorts of squiggly jigglies. And if you got a dog that's using your carpet for toilet paper, and then you and your children are walking on that carpet barefoot, you stand to get hookworms because they go into the soft tissue under the toe, and then you have a whole family that's infected with worms, and you get pruritus and other things, grinding of your teeth, headaches, pruritus, which is itching orifices, your belly button and your behind itches. And back in my day, well, I can't tell you what they used to do back in my day because that'll get me a strike. But they had a ridiculous thing that they did for the children. They gave you something with molasses, and if you didn't go blind, it cleaned out all of the worms in your system. And then the next day you would pass all of these little, they used to call them seat worms. And in particular, it was very dangerous for little girls to play in a sandbox. I wish YouTube would get the notifications right. Well, YouTube has been taking down people, Justin. I noticed that people that have subscribed to my channel and other channels have been desubscribed. And not being a conspiracy theorist, I would probably say that when YouTube backs up its servers or loads new software, you know, like when you restart your phone, that maybe a lot of the subscriptions get wiped out. So I'm not going to say that it's some evil plan, but I have noticed that the algorithm is telling me that a lot more people are watching my channel that are subscribed. But I'm getting hits from Germany and all over the world. And one thing I want to say about that is that the people of Russia and the people in Ukraine and all of that other stuff, they just want to get along. They want to dig their potatoes and raise their family. It's these evil and ambitious men and women that are pushing this world right to the brink of WW3 so that they'll have a legacy. And some of them believe that if there's a WAR, that all of the dirt and smoke going up into the atmosphere will help cool the earth down, and they'll get rid of the excess population at the same time. These people think so far out of the box in clown world that it's like the people that are trying to drag that continent of Antarctica out into better weather. And I believe that's one of the things that they're using CERN for. And the reason I'll say that is when I first moved here 11 years ago, after the tax man took my house away, my street was perfectly due north and south. Now, if I were to go out into Route 1 and take a compass, it'll point due west 15 degrees. So something has moved, and all of the land masses float on liquid magma anyway. So what they're trying to do with, I believe with CERN, among other things, is they're trying to drag this continent of Antarctica out from underneath of all of the ice so that they can own it and repopulate it, because it's supposed to be a fantastic big chunk of land. And that way they can depopulate all of the big cities, get rid of all of us useless eaters, and start everything over again. I mean, they got big, big ideas, like using CERN to change time and all of that other stuff. And they're pumping mass amounts of electricity into the ionosphere with CERN and with HAARP. And I believe that that's where the Earth's water is going, because the magnetic field of the Earth is the only thing that's holding our water to the planet and keeps the solar winds from evaporating the water on Earth. And every time these lunatics turn on HAARP or CERN, it pushes the ionosphere further out into space so they can do their time traveling and other stuff. And one moral issue about CERN is that when you inject the basic particles of life into the Large Hadron Collider, you're actually creating mini-verses. Instead of creating a universe, you're creating a mini-verse inside of that machine that they're looking at. They're creating antimatter, mini-verses, and then you turn the machine off and it's all destroyed, well, except for the antimatter, which has to be siphoned off and contained because it's very explosive. But they're affecting time and space and all of this other stuff with CERN, and it's causing all of this catastrophe on the Earth. And then they're going to tell us that it's climate change and that it's our fault for driving our Prius and eating a hamburger. You know, they're not talking about all of these nuclear BOMBS that they're getting ready to unleash and all of these experiments, not to even mention the biological stuff that they intend to run through the system and help with their depopulation. So fam, it's a time to get serious. And if you're serious and you're a young person and your parents won't listen to you, go ahead and buy a bag of rice for your family and put it in your closet. You don't have to tell anybody. I have friends that have their heads in the sand and they're not doing anything to prep for their survival. So every month I'll send them a 10-pound bag of rice, or I'll send them beans or something like that. And I never hear any thank you or anything from them. Any thank you, kiss my butt, go to heck, nothing. But I know when that day comes, and because Mr. Burns has started to conscript our young people and send them over to Eastern Europe to be put through the meat grinder, and food is unavailable and all of that other stuff, they will be grateful. And fam, my last point I want to make, if you're a young person conscription is very probably in your future, where Mr. Burns is going to redo the draft and start sending people over to the WAR. So if you're a young person, you want to do whatever it takes to get the word doctor put in front of your name so that you're not going to have to be given a GUN and a helmet and pushed out of an airplane to go fight somebody else's WAR, because it's coming, fam. When they get this stuff started between all of the different countries, I'm old. I've seen this coming before. It's coming to America, fam. So you need to have your preps. You need to have your bills paid up. You need to have some coinage. You know, I pay my service people now in silver. I don't pay people anymore in useless paper dollars, because half the world has abandoned the dollar. And as soon as our government finds out that it can't get the rest of the world to buy our debt like they've been doing, and we're stuck with it, you're going to see prices go through the roof. Gold is going to go through the roof, even more so than it is. Silver, precious metals, gasoline, food, everything is going through the roof, fam. So if you're downstairs playing video games in mommy and daddy's basement and you're waiting for somebody to tell you what to do and when to do it, I'm sorry to tell you, you're not going to make it. You have to prepare now. It's late in the day and you have to prepare now. I don't even believe, though, personally, having one of those game systems is a good idea, even having it in your house. I believe that it's a gateway for the demonic. You have children down there playing Grand Theft Auto, and that doesn't sound too bad, but they're getting hookers in their cars, and they're doing nasty stuff, and then they're pushing the hooker out of the car. What kind of game is that for a child? You know? And parents, if you're not watching this stuff and seeing what your children are being exposed to, then you're part of the problem. If you're sending your child off to school and have somebody else groom your child and give your child their values and everything without checking into it, then when the child rebels, you know, you have nobody to blame but yourself. In any case, fam, I love you all. I prayed for you all today. You're always in my thoughts and my heart. I have to check my blood pressure and take my medicine. Pop out.